Okay, and welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your franchise guide, and you've come to the right show for those people looking, those corporate execs looking to experience time and financial freedom via franchising. We answer all your questions. We talk about business ownership, how to grow your business. We talk about financials, numbers, investments. The list goes on. Please send us your questions as you have. We've created a lot of great episodes answering a lot of the questions you've been asking us. So please continue to send us those great questions. For today, we have actually very excited. It's been a few years now since we had my good friend. I call him friend, advisor, mentor, you name it. Rocky Lalvani from Profit First. Rocky, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me, Giuseppe. Excited to be here today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And it's we started a while ago. Maybe we should have recorded from the very beginning, but every time I talk to you, I'm always extracting some good advice. So just for you to know, for everyone to know, I greatly appreciate it. And if I can return the favor, don't know how, but if I can return the favor, let me know. So yeah, we had Rocky on. It was back in April of 2020, and we talked about Profit First and the business you're currently running and just how much of an impact it's had on my life. But before we even get into that, give us a little bit of a background about who you are and how did you get involved with Profit First?
So I'm probably like a lot of your listeners. I spent way too much time in corporate, had enough of it, said, what do I really want to do with my life? What would really be enjoyable? And you know, that was the constant struggle of when am I going to pull the ripcord? And there came a point in time where things got not so fun at work anymore. And it was like, okay, do I hop to another job or do I pull the ripcord and go do my own thing?
Right.
And I sat down and I thought about it. And I think the thing that came to mind is if I wait another 5 years, will I have regrets if this is successful that I didn't do it sooner? And I was like, I'll be kicking myself. So, you know what? I pulled the cord, looked at different options, right? Going out there saying, okay, how do I do this? Do I do my own business? Do I build it myself? Who do I partner with? And in investigating all those options, I found Profit First was a perfect fit for me, in line with my values and the way I wanted to do business and the models that they used. We were just in such congruence. So I partnered with Mike Michalowicz and the Profit First team and started my business 3.5 years ago. 6 months into it, COVID hit, pivoted quick, and literally taken off over that period of time. And I am thrilled to have left corporate. I'm doing what I love. I'm doing what's in line with my skill sets, working with the kind of people I want to work with and making more money than I ever had. So it's all cool.
That's awesome. So really, you know, taking advantage of what, you know, business ownership gives to you, right? Time and financial freedom. But really, we talked about this, and this has been coming up quite a bit, is really working with the people you enjoy working with. And that's a big one, you know, not having to rely on your 10 different managers above you at work, really enjoying the clients you're working with. If it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. So I think that's big. And that's been coming up because we've been talking a lot about time and financial freedom. So, you know, freedom of purpose and who you can work with have been two popular ones the past few weeks. Tell everyone, obviously, you know, we've talked about Profit First on our episode a couple of years back, and I brought her up on the show. But what is Profit First? Because honestly, I wish we had met years and years ago, or I guess you've 15 plus years ago when I first started in business ownership. You weren't around, but I wish I'd stumbled across Profit First and what that was, because I never knew how to budget. As silly as that sounds. So what is Profit First for someone that's never heard of Profit First?
Profit First is a cash flow management system for entrepreneurs. It works the way business owners work. It doesn't work the way accountants work. So I think a big part of the problem is most accounting is looking backwards. They're more interested in getting the numbers in the right place on the right reports than they are in looking forward and taking action. And, for me, my biggest surprise is I just assumed business owners understood finance. And the reality is most of them don't. They understand the part of the business they love, whatever it is that they're doing. Very few of them love accounting and looking at the numbers. The second problem that comes up is when you look at financial reports, there is no report that gives you the full picture of your business. So I think a lot of business owners just are struggling. My P&L says I'm profitable, but I have no cash.
Right.
Like, where is this profit that you keep telling me I made? And so I think that's the second part of the struggle. And Profit First fixes both of those problems. So what Profit First basically is, it's a cash flow system where you essentially give every dollar a job and you send it to do that job, but there's a priority to it. Mm-hmm. So the accountants say the formula for profit is sales minus expenses equals profit, which makes profit a leftover, an afterthought. Mm-hmm. What Profit First says is sales minus profit equals expenses. And so we constrain our expenses. We take our profit first. And basically what the system does and what it allows you to do is when money comes into your business, you allocate it to what it's for. So you allocate money to your profit. You allocate money to your pay. A lot of business owners struggle to pay themselves first in the business. They pay themselves last, or they're afraid to remove money from the company. This solves all of those problems, and you've got the money set aside. We also put money aside for taxes. Most business owners don't save for taxes, and when tax time comes, it causes major issues, major struggles. And then we put money aside for your operating expenses. So now you know how much you truly have to run your company on. Sometimes, depending on the company, we'll create maybe another account or two. So there might be a marketing account. If you've got a seasonal business, we'll create an account so that we remove the seasonality cash flow, make it easier for you. But that's the basic principle of what Profit First is. It's all based on the book by Mike Michalowicz. It's simple, but for whatever reason, doing simple is hard and getting started is hard. But if you implement it, the biggest thing business owners have told me is over time, they have more cash in their business than they've ever had. They sleep at night and they know that everything is just humming along well.
Yeah, and I will say, personally, it's been a game. It's one thing to read and say I agree, but to actually implement it and know, I don't have to wait until the end of the year for the accountant to tell me what I may or may not owe. If I can create buckets. So yeah, I know reading the book, it depends on the business and the business you're in, employees, the amount of volume you're doing. But if you can create a bucket of, for example, for every 100,000, just say you're billing 100,000 a month, and 20% is going to go directly to taxes, and 20% is going to go to operating expense, and then obviously your profitability, your pay to the owner. You're going to start working within those numbers. So, and that was my biggest aha moment was, I don't know what my marketing expense is. How do you even figure that out? I mean, I'm a numbers guy. I went to school and graduated with a major in investments and finance, but how do you actually budget? That seemed to be one area missing. So I know that if that 20% was 20,000 for the month, I need to keep my expense within 20,000. There wasn't anything going over. You can go a little underneath, under that 20,000, but if a project costs 25, well, that had to wait until the following month because that bucket would have been depleted and would have been, in the negative. So something as basic at that. And if you can strictly automate it and have for every dollar that hits, and then they get allocated towards the bucket so you don't touch that money, it'll save you headaches. And at the end of the year, when you get hit with a six-figure tax bill, you're not going to be scratching your head saying, where the hell am I coming up with this money? It's already been allocated. It's already in the account. Did I miss something there? I mean, it's such a simple, but it's got to be set up initially or else it just won't get done.
Correct. You have to set it up and then you have to actually do it and run the system. And it's pretty simple to do, but yet, like I said, simple's hard. It's all based on Parkinson's law. So Parkinson's law says pretty much a business will use up all the resources that are allocated. And that goes for time and money. So, if you think about it, you go to someone and say, hey, we have this project. The first two questions are, what's your budget?
Mm-hmm.
And how long, how quickly do you need this done?
Right.
Whatever those answers are, people will figure out how to get it done within those answers.
Right.
But if you give yourself too big a budget or too much time, you will waste your time and you will waste your money. Too often, business owners throw money at a problem instead of thinking through and being a little bit more resourceful with the problem. And then the other thing that happens, especially with new business owners, is they're like, well, I don't know when I can take money out of the business, or I need to reinvest in the business. And they keep reinvesting and reinvesting and reinvesting, and they never take a profit. And that you went into business to be profitable and make money. You should take your money.
Absolutely. And I will say firsthand, I was literally the last person to get paid. The credit cards got paid. The employees got paid. We had AR. So sometimes we didn't get, depending on the type of account, it was 60 to 90 days out. So I was the last to get paid. And I said, this cannot continue with my last company. There had to have been an easier way. So definitely a game changer. The book is directly behind you there. So Profit First, definitely encourage anyone listening in to pick that up. We could put that in the show links. So there's the book. It outlines exactly what Profit First is. We talked about it at a high level. So, and this is a couple questions maybe you can answer here all at once, but who is the ideal person or company that you work with, and how do you work with them? Kind of what's the service offering to help them implement Profit First?
So this is kind of varied and changed recently. We used to basically work with 7-figure business owners. We've now expanded our offering all the way from a kind of do it yourself to do it with help to have it done for you service. So whether you're a brand new startup or you've got 7-8 figures of revenue, we have something to work with you at that level. The biggest thing we do, though, I think, is Profit First. The bank accounts are the first step. They're truly just getting the money flowing.
Right.
It's really helping you to think outside the box, to be more resourceful. So you've been talking about, hey, I keep spending all this money on marketing. A big part of what we start to ask is, well, which part of your marketing works? Right? Which one's actually bringing you the leads? Did you build a system to measure that? Have you looked at it? Is it working? Is it changing? How is it changing? Because, social media constantly changes. An ad that worked last week might not work next week.
Right.
Are you keeping track of that? And then the big thing we talk about is being more resourceful. And we've talked about the book, You Ask, They Answer all the time. How do I build a marketing system that doesn't cost money? Right? That's the big thing. Like, how do we be more resourceful in the way that we do things, so we're not just throwing money at every problem? Because pretty soon you start throwing money around, there's none left for you.
Right.
And so I think that's a big part of what we do, is we help people to think outside of the box, to measure what's going on. So here's the reality of it. When you have a target, it's really easy to hit a target, right? You might not be perfect, but you've got a pretty good idea. This is my target. This is the direction I move in. Most business owners don't have a target.
Right.
They've got a vague idea of what they want. They think they've got it written down. But until you have the target and until you measure against it, the chances of you getting the results you want are slim to none. I mean, imagine watching a football game and there's no scoreboard. Like, how long do you think you'd be interested in that game?
Yeah.
Right? No clock. When's the quarter end?
Right.
We don't know. Do we even have a quarter? I think in football, all of these things are important. The time, the direction, the same thing in your business. So a big part of what we do is help people to build their targets, help them with the accountability, and then help them get out of their business to work on their business. Because most business owners are pretty smart. They're pretty resourceful. They just get busy. And what we do is we pull them out and we help them to set the time aside to think through these things more so that they can make better choices.
Yeah, and the accountability is the big part too, right? It's really this is the way I view it. It's truly custom in that every business is different. Just because you're in the similar industries, it may be a little bit different depending on how you run your business. We've seen a lot of people, for example, pivot, as you mentioned, videos before COVID, and now I think between and Zoom, it's a daily basis. So people have pivoted from in person to virtual. So now I think it's kind of a hybrid right now, especially in the franchise world, where you have the option you could do in person or half the meetings in person, half via Zoom. But it's really holding them accountable, making sure they follow through. But as you mentioned, also assisting them in making those decisions, because everyone's situation is different. Everyone, what they're looking to produce from the business, what they're looking to really create from owning this business is going to be different. Correct?
It is. And that's why it's got to be customized to you. You can't just use a standard off the shelf process. And it's surprising because the book teaches a lot of what to do. And yet when we talk to people, they either don't do it or they don't get it right.
Right.
And that's, I think, the big part of the struggle. And that's what we help with. We make sure that you do it, that it's done right, and that when you hit a hiccup, this is the big part.
Mm-hmm.
When you hit a hiccup, there's somebody there to help you through the hiccup so that you don't just quit and give up and go do something else. And I think that's a big part of what happens is people don't. It's all based on timeless principles. If you follow the timeless principles, they work, but you got to keep doing it. And that's true of any business, right?
Absolutely.
You got to keep doing it. You have to pivot. You got to figure out your next step. And that's a big part of what we do is we help people figure out what's their next step, give them clarity on what's going on financially in their business. But more important, what do I do next? And how do I make a change? And where should I focus my time? When we look at the stuff, we pretty much can tell, oh, this business has this problem, or this business has that problem. Here are the steps that it's going to take to get from here to where we need to go. And that just takes time. And that's a lot of the conversations we've had, right? Because we talk about our businesses all the time. How do I do whatever without having this guy wants $5,000 to help me? This guy wants 10 grand. Is that even going to work? Too often we're buying a lot of stuff that doesn't deliver.
Right. It's taking back. I mean, yes, you're going to have to test some things and see if they work or not. But there's just so much information out there. It's the shiny object, or it's like you have to do everything. Do you have to be on every platform? Do you focus just on one? It's a lot, and it's very hard to really know. LinkedIn, are you supposed to put the big one? I was just talking to someone. Do you put the link in the actual post, or do you put it in the comments? And I've heard both talking to people, and it's changing. And then you lose points or you lose viewers if you do more than too many posts or too many hashtags. It's really simplifying it, because I started getting into that space and I'm just like, wait a second, I'm not enjoying it. I just want to simplify it. But going back to profit first, I mean, you really have, it's not just the financial buckets. You have a coach in your corner, and so it's kind of essentially an all-inclusive. You're really kind of working the entire business with, at the end of the day, you're in business to make money. So you want to make sure it's making money, but you're not, when I talk to people buying franchise, you're not buying yourself a job. You're buying yourself investing in a business. If a franchise is or is not a good fit, whether it be a startup or a franchise, but you want to make sure that it's that vehicle that's helping you create the life that you desire. And I think the coaching aspect and the accountability, because telling people what to do is great, but if they're not following through, it's really worthless. Reading a book and learning all this great stuff and not doing anything is not helping you. So I think the accountability is where the true value is.
One of the things that we find is more often than not, especially with the franchises will say, this is what your number should be. Mm-hmm. And what I find from the franchise owners is they're like, okay, they told me I'm supposed to do this, but how the hell do I do it? Mm-hmm. And that's where they struggle. Like, they're told this is the metric, but nobody tells them how to hit the metric. And they're not taught how to understand the financials. The other thing is, usually in the franchise industry, the financials are based on what the franchise's needs are, not necessarily what the actual owner's needs are, helping them to make decisions. So that's a big part of it. We create custom dashboards that make sense for that particular business owner. And I think the reality is, and people need to realize this, most people struggle with money. And most business owners struggle with money. It's really easy to see what your top line is. We know what the sales are. Mm-hmm. Very few people, though, you don't see people talking about their bottom line, their net profit. You don't see that conversation happening because it's a harder number to figure out.
Right.
And the other reason is because I think a lot of the people that are out there screaming and yelling and pounding their chest, at the end of the day, when you look underneath the covers, there's no money there left for the guy who's running the business or gal. And that's a problem. It's because they're just spinning their wheels and they're generating revenue, but they're not keeping any.
Yep, I talked to a lot of both, especially outside the franchise world. I have a couple of colleagues, and they talk about the huge numbers they're putting up. But you look at the bottom line; they're not making much. And I said, are some of these jobs even worth taking on when the margins are so low, and considering the amount of time? So not only is it low margin, but it's taking twice the amount of time. And some of those business owners have gone back and said, you know what, I do have to either increase my rate or may have to let some customers go because it's really, I'm having to have an extra 2 employees just to service some of these larger accounts. So it's really being selective as to who you're gonna work with at the end of the day. It's got to be profitable, and it can't be taxing to the office if that customer is taking up 80% of your time.
No, there's another book by Jonathan Burns, who's an MIT professor. Mm-hmm. It's called Islands of Profit in a Sea of Red Ink. And basically, he looked at large corporations. And what he basically said is that 20 to 30% of what a large corporation does generates more than 100% of the profit many times. What happens, though, is 30 to 40% of what the company does loses money. And the remaining part of the company breaks even. The key, and we see this in small businesses too, if we can figure out the 30% that makes all the money, we can get rid of 70%. We can be fat and happy and not work a lot.
Right.
It takes a lot of time to figure out where that 30% is that's driving all your profits. But if you can do that within your company and your company follows that model, then you work less, you make more. And that's the key. And that's a big part of what we try and help people to do, is looking at their entire business and saying, where can we find the profit in the business? And how do we eliminate everything else that isn't driving profit? And there's many stories of companies that have cut their sales by 70%, cut all the people that they had to manage, cut all the overhead, and walked away with more money. And that's the key, right? Business shouldn't be hard. It should be profitable. So I think too often we grow for the sake of growing, not for the sake of profitability.
I could not agree more. And we have a mutual colleague, and I don't want to name his name here, but he had a practice with a large team, and he ended up closing that practice and going solo. And he said he works the same amount of hours overall, but enjoys it more. It's pure profit. And he got to choose in the select few of clients he kept. And it was a pretty amazing story. And he said, I'm actually making more money now with no employees. And I'm not saying everyone should get rid of their employees. This is just the business he was in. But he just said, I'm happier. I do everything on my own. I don't have to worry about things may or may not getting done. And I got rid of the customers that we made no money on, and I needed a team just to just to service those customers. So very interesting. I want to pause here for a second. Actually, we're both part of the SMB Podcast Network, our show sponsor. So just a quick word from them, and then we'll continue the conversation. We hope you're enjoying the show. This episode of Franchise Freedom is brought to you by the SMB Podcast Network.com. The network is a collection of podcasts and shows from around the internet, which focus on bringing you interviews with amazing guests who share actionable advice, ideas, and information for small and medium-sized business owners and entrepreneurs. Visit www.smbpodcastnetwork.com to find more great shows and easily subscribe to be notified of new episodes. It's a great way to discover quality content. If you discovered us today via the network, then I hope you're enjoying the show and will consider subscribing directly so you never miss any of our great episodes. Now back to the show. All right, and we are back with Rocky Lalvani. So Rocky, we were talking about just the going back to Profit First and the relaunch and kind of changing who you are working with. So as far as a future business owner, right? Because our audience are corporate execs looking to make that first leap into business ownership. I would say that's probably a majority of the show audience, and then others, are looking for that second or third business. So for those corporate execs looking to make that leap, when is the right time to start looking into Profit First? Is it reading the book and then reaching out to you kind of, immediately? Is it 6 months in? When is the ideal time?
So I think before you even buy your business, you should read Profit First. Because I think you really need to. The big thing about Profit First, it changes the mindset of how you look at your business.
Right.
And so up front, what it's going to give you is the ability to pencil out your business and say, hey, wait a minute, does this business even work? Or is this going to be a business that loses money up front? And so I think that's a big part of it. Or at least pencil out to figure out, well, how much money do I need to generate in revenue in order to be profitable? And then ask yourself, is that doable? And not just yourself, but go out and look at other people with that kind of business. Are they able to do that kind of revenue? Does it make sense? So I think up front, if you do the back of the napkin pencil work, you'll start to see which businesses are more profitable, which ones are going to be more constrained. Where is that type of opportunity to focus your efforts and time? And I think if more people just did that back of the napkin math up front, they would prevent themselves from making mistakes that are going to cost them a fortune. And that's what a lot of times we'll do with our clients. They're like, oh, we want to go do X. We're like, well, let's do the back of the napkin math. And then they do that and they go, oh, we're not doing X. I go, yeah, the numbers show it doesn't make sense. But there's always a way to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to think through it and figure that out. Classic example, one of our favorite Profit First stories is the Savannah Bananas. They are literally taking the country by storm right now. They're a, like an independent small baseball team. So when you think about baseball teams, the word profit usually doesn't come up. They're usually a hobby business for somebody who's already built their wealth. But the Coles who run the team, they weren't in that situation. And when they read Profit First and they did the back of the napkin math, they realized, hey, we've got to do things dramatically differently. Right. And they actually changed the entire model for how their team works. And they've been profitable throughout. They've been profitable during COVID. They continue to be successful and grow. They understand what business they're in. They're not in the baseball business, and they understand how to be profitable within it. So I think it doesn't matter where you are in the spectrum. Somebody's got to do the back of the napkin math, look at it and say, does this make sense? Because I can't tell you how many stories I've heard of 7-figure revenue, negative profits. Right. Yep. And you can only do that for so long. Right? They bleed themselves out so slowly. We hear that a lot in the online product space with people trying to sell stuff on these different platforms. And even if they're buying something for $1 and selling it for $2, they're actually losing money and they just don't realize it.
Yeah. What's your client acquisition? And to your point, by the way, and I wouldn't say I'm guilty of it, although I guess I am. Just not maybe I blame it on ignorance and not really understanding the differences. But to your point, there really is no one financial report, right? People look at the P&L and balance sheets, and it's like, right, I made it 200,000 in net income, but where is it? It's gone. I have $0 in the bank account, and I see so many people relying strictly on cash flow. So they got $5,000 in the bank. All right, we got money in the bank. I can afford this and I can pay myself. And it's like, well, are you profitable, or are you customers paying a month in advance? This is going to eventually catch up to you. And I see a lot of people run their businesses. It's a little scary because they have no idea where they stand at the end of the year.
You know what happens, and especially in the last couple of years, a lot of businesses got a ton of money from the government, whether it be EIDL loans or PPP loans, or, whatever. So there's this big cash influx in, and they're spending it. So they're actually spending borrowed money for daily operations. So they don't realize that they're losing money. And that is a big problem. The problem with the balance sheet is a view of static time.
Right.
It's not, nobody tells you you're supposed to read the balance sheet from month to month. You have to actually look at it over a period of time. And then you've got to play Where's Waldo? Where's the difference? Which is not easy to do. It takes a lot of skill to be able to figure out, to see where the changes occurred and where the money disappeared to. Because as you said, my P&L says I'm profitable, and yet there's no cash in the bank.
And that month to month is crucial. For years, I had a previous account. They said, now we'll figure out at the end of the year. I'm like, no, I want to know where I stand every month, because sales are going up, but then the higher they're going up, there's a hole somewhere. Either we're paying a contractor too much, or some expenses that we didn't account for went up. So on a month to month basis is crucial. Not just looking at the entire year, because you want to look for trends and spikes and fix those immediately before it's too late. So that is a very good point there.
And I think people don't realize business growth is actually one of the leading causes of business failure. The businesses grow so fast that all their cash gets sucked out, because it might go into inventory. It might get lost somewhere. And then the next thing they know, they have no money in the bank, even though sales are better than ever. And the whole business comes to a grinding halt because there's no cash to pay the employees.
Right.
And then everything blows up. So growth alone is not necessarily a good thing.
Very good point. Anyone that wants to reach out, so kind of going back, they read the book. This is prior to making any decision on a business they're looking to purchase. And that's to help with their pro forma, kind of mapping it out, seeing if it's a good fit. When is a good time, and how do they to contact you, and how do they go about contacting you?
So I have a podcast too called Profit Answer Man. What I recommend is people just check out the podcast, because what we do is we teach all of this on the podcast, and we give you real life examples from people who've used the system. We show you how in different parts of your business you can look at profitability. So we teach everything there. I think that's a good first step for people, is just to go listen to the podcast, start to understand the different parts of it. And then if they want to reach out, there's a link in the podcast to get on my calendar or send me an email.
Yeah, it's a great podcast. I've been on the show. I've listened to quite a few episodes, and it does cover the various topics. So I found it extremely helpful as well. So we'll link everything here in the show notes. I know we're hitting the 35-minute mark or so. Kind of as a final, I know we didn't talk about this before, but there's a lot going on in the world. The economy is kind of up in the air. People are talking about the recession. I've been in the investment world prior to getting into franchising, and the economy, the stock market, everything is cyclical. What do you have to say to people to help them prepare if we're going into some tough times? What's the best way to prepare for what's to come?
So number one, cash is always king. So conserving cash and being ready with that. Number two is figure out your early warning signals, right? So for many of my clients, we look at the early warning signals to say, is our business slowing down? And third, put a plan in place ahead of time while you have the time to think, to say, if this occurs, what are my options? What are my pivots? What can I do and how do I make decisions so that when we get hit with something, it's not, oh my God, what do I do? It's, okay, we've got so much cash because we saved it. And here's the plan. Here are the steps that we said we would go through to pivot and handle the recession that we're facing. And every business, some businesses explode during a recession. They do really well. Some don't. Look at your business and ask yourself, which way is the wind going to blow? And how do I pivot into the right direction? But do it while you have time to think, proactive, not reactive.
So do it now.
Do it now.
And you're able, and if someone is stuck, they're not certain, they're listening to this episode, that's something that Rocky can help out with. So you can feel free to, I would say, definitely check out the book, learn Profit First, learn about what that specifically is, and obviously gets into a lot more detail. Listen to the show, contact Rocky right from the contact information. It'll definitely be worth it. And as kind of we mentioned here, the timing is now to prepare, not when things are too late, but there's always options. There's always pivots. There's we've seen it over and over again. So Rocky, this has been awesome. It's been a pleasure. I wish we recorded all our conversations. Maybe we should, and not have it so formal in a podcast, but every time we speak, I always learn something new. So I wanted to thank you again for being on the show. We'll include all your info on those show notes. Check out the book, Speak with Rocky. For someone that does reach out, I'm sure you do some type of kind of right fit, is it a good fit to work together? I'm assuming on the first call. So if someone's on the fence,
we do all of that.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So definitely reach out, and Rocky, looking forward to chatting again soon.
I am too. And hey, before all of you leave, can you do me a favor? If you like Giuseppe and the content, give him a like, give him a thumbs up, share this episode on whatever platform. Maybe give it to that coworker who's always bitching about how much they hate their job. Say, hey, here's a way out. Listen to Giuseppe. He'll help you out.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Yes, I greatly appreciate it. Even if it's to share it to one person or just share it to your social, we greatly appreciate it. We're here to help educate where we can and level that playing field. Rocky, this will probably be coming out towards the end of the year. So happy holidays to everyone listening in. This will probably launch third or fourth week in December, and looking forward to your feedback. Definitely, if you have any questions or any comments on the show, leave them right here on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the show. Take care.